Good afternoon and welcome to Funny Like a Clown podcast. I am your host, Dennis Wirth, episode 13, February 17th, 2019. That's 13 right there if you're on video, right? I got enough fingers to go to 13, but as always, Funny Like a Clown podcast is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time, there is only one G Vegas available at gvegas.webs.com. And today we are going to be discussing Monty Python. And to do that, I have a friend of mine, fellow comedian hailing from New Hampshire on the phone, Ricky Mapleton. Welcome, Ricky.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
How's life in New Hampshire?
Cold but sunny. Cold but sunny.
All right, so if somebody goes to New Hampshire that's listening, what's the one thing they got to see in New Hampshire?
The mountains, very three-dimensional.
The mountains, there you go. Very scenic. Well, yeah, I've been up to the White Mountains. That is very beautiful up there. You're right.
Yeah, we recently took a trip up to Stowe and did all the touristy things: cabbage cheese, Sound of Music, place Van Trump's, ice cream. You just follow the trail. It's a really nice.
Yeah, I brought my kid up there when he was young. There was Santa's Village and Six Gun City and Storyland. They got it all.
Yeah, what's in North Woodstock, which is a nice little town.
There you go. But the reason we are here is we are discussing Monty Python. And I'm bringing on local comics that are friends of mine to discuss who inspired them. What made you choose Monty Python?
Grew up with them. Love them.
So were they your influence in comedy, would you say? Or?
I would say it influenced my sense of humor.
Okay.
First time I saw Monty Python was they used to show it on New Year's on PBS, Channel 11 or Channel 2 in this area. And me and my friends would gather around my black and white TV set in my bedroom, and they showed it at 12 o'clock. They showed Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and that went on for about 4 or 5 years until, of course, it went more commercialized. But that was the only place to see it.
Right.
And we knew it was very bizarre. We really liked it.
So what's your favorite memory out of all the sketches they did? What's your favorite Monty Python bit?
I like the architect sketch when John Cleese goes into a boardroom trying to get them to make his building.
Okay.
And before he realizes that, he thought it was going to be a slaughterhouse. So his company made a design for a slaughterhouse. He came in and started describing the slaughterhouse. And then after his rejection from them that they didn't want a slaughterhouse, they just wanted a simple block of flats, he breaks into a crazed, great little rant, if you would. One of my favorites. Well, it's the only one I can really do pretty much verbatim.
You remember it, right. Minute with second for second, you could recite it in your head, right?
I could recite it right now if you want to.
Well, I'm sure they can check it out. But Monty Python, they're known for their sketch comedy in the television series Monty Python's Flying Circus. It first aired on BBC in 1969. They did 45 episodes over 4 series, which I guess that would be seasons in British terms. It turned into from Impact stage show to they did films, they did albums, from the TV show. They were doing stage shows, films, albums, books, musical. But to begin with, it had more of a cult following than a mainstream following, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And do you think it's do you think it's coincidence that this is episode 13 of Funny Like a Clown podcast, and we're talking about a cult following comic?
Well, I think there were cult following in the 60s and 70s, and it became a little more mainstream in the 80s.
Right, as it got older, one more mainstream.
But sure, Dennis, they had a long history of 10, 20 years. Well, maybe 10, closer to 10 years when they were a cult following. People either, and then if you saw them. Not all their skits are fantastic. They have a lot of stuff that's not very humorous.
Right.
But there was a Family Guy episode where they discussed you're going to have to watch. One of the punishments what they gave the kids was they told them you're going to have to watch the 700 hours of Monty Python that isn't funny.
So you got to watch all of it to really appreciate it. You can't just watch a little bit.
Well, watching all of it could be a little painful. I think you got to pick and choose what you watch.
What you want to? Okay.
I think a lot of stuff they did, like for contract, they had to do 20, 30 shows. So they just kind of did a lot of stuff that really wasn't super. But the stuff that you see out, like Argument Clinic, Dead Parrot, Country Frog.
That's the mainstream stuff, right?
But there's probably 20 or 30 fantastic.
Well, even stand-up comedians, they got their skits that you remember them for, and then, you know, some of the rest of their album, it's just there for filling, but they got their routine that you remember them for as a comic, you know?
Exactly. Kind of like the Excuse Me, Steve Martin.
Right.
And, you know, his album came out, his little punchline was Excuse Me. So we wrapped the whole live album around it.
And it went viral, yeah, right. But I mean, Monty Python's influence on comedy, it's been compared to the Beatles' influence on music. Would you agree with that they had that big of a... 100%.
I agree 100% with you.
You do agree with that, okay? I mean, the Beatles, that's the standard everybody sets right there. So you think they set the bar in comedy, Monty Python?
Well, sure. There is a connection between the Beatles and Monty Python. Would you happen to know that, Dennis?
I didn't, but let's hear it. That's what we're here for.
George Harrison financed one of their movies.
Really?
I think he financed The Life of Brian, a very controversial movie.
Okay.
He saw the Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and George Harrison liked it so much that he bankrolled A Life of Brian.
And that's what the fans do, man. If you're behind something, then you don't mind getting behind it 100%, right?
The Life of Brian is a very, very interesting movie in the catalog of Monty Python. Very, very interesting movie.
Influential, yeah.
Well, boy, they made a lot of enemies, I think, from the far right, I guess you could say, that thought they were a little bit picking on the religion.
Right.
Religion as a whole.
And that's back then. Imagine nowadays where everybody's offended by everything. If they put the stuff out now, people go nuts now, wouldn't they?
Oh my God, yeah.
I mean, even for back then they were edgy. For now it would be, oh my gosh, what are they saying? But let me say some names here. These are the members of Monty Python. Graham Chapman, John Cleese, Terry Gilman, Eric Idle, Terry Jones, and Michael Palin. And they were a group who did this together, and some, you know, were more famous than others. But why do you think, I mean, the Abbotts and Costellos, the Dean Martins and Jerry Lewises, why are there no big comedy duos like that nowadays, do you think?
Too bad. Well, I don't know if the Second City in Chicago still going on, or...
What is it?
A Second City, I think they call it. It's like a play group that, like, John Belushi came out of. And but as far as going on tour as a comedy duo, boy.
Yeah. I know. Why do you... Is it strictly money that you got to split your money with someone else as opposed to getting it all, or...
I don't know. But five guys working together, that lasted for about 3 years. Then John Cleese left Monty Python to pursue a show called Faulty Towers, which was hysterical. It was about him managing a restaurant in his clumsy, silly walk sort of way. So there is some Monty Python episodes, Monty Python's Flying Circus, that does not have John Cleese in it, and I think it shows.
Right, because he was one of the main, if not the main, he was one of the main characters that were remembered for.
Absolutely, and you always have to give a shout out to Terry Gilliam, who was the only American.
That was in the British group, yeah.
He was the only American, and he did a lot of the animation on all the movies and all the TV shows that they became kind of famous for. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Would you say it was the Saturday Night Live of its time? I mean, before Saturday Night Live, this was the Saturday Night Live.
That's an interesting question, Dennis.
Because, I mean, people remember Belushi and Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd, and those are the comics, you know, who set the bar on Saturday Night Live. But, I mean, did these guys set the bar even before that?
That is pre. Well, what do you think the guys at Saturday Night Live were listening to? Were they listening to Jerry Lewis, Three Stooges, I would imagine?
Well, sure, yeah. So I guess it depends on your era. What area do you grow up in? That's who the legends are for you, right?
Correct. It's interesting that question, which I just now forgot what it was.
Right. Well, here's something I found interesting. Now, they're one of the few duos that, when they did the TV show, that they were a comedy team that they wrote and they performed their own material. They had creative control, which even, you know, we watched the Jay Leno's and the David Lettermans. They all had writers who wrote for them. They didn't do all their own material But I mean, so they were free to really break the rules and experiment with stuff. And you know, Buddy Holly, the musician, once said, you know, only way he'd make music is if he had no producer and no editor. You know, he's like, if the producer could give you, you know, what's in my head, you'd be paying him to make an album, not me. But I mean, do you think that was part of the success, that they have total creative control?
I think really nobody's even watching at that time as far as what they were putting out, I don't think. Because a lot of the stuff was a little risque.
Well, that's what I'm saying. They were free to do that risque stuff, where if they had a producer, they'd say, no, 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 you can't do that on TV, you got to cut that out. But nobody was telling them they had to cut it out.
I guess that's one of the advantages of having 5 people. Someone's doing a skit, you got 3 other people in the back writing.
Right. But has that ever happened to you in a comedy show where, you know, you show up to a show and it's their show and they say, hey, you got to work totally clean. It's my show, and it takes away from your act because that ain't really what you do?
Well, that's interesting. In the history of myself personally doing stand-up,
right,
a lot of interesting stories like most comics have.
Right. So you've had people give you rules to shows that you put you on before, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
If I did or did not follow them, there's another.
Yeah, right. Because they're trying to tell you how to be funny, and you know what makes you funny. Somebody else can't tell you.
You're right. It's interesting.
So I thought that was one, you know, where Monty Python, they had no chains. They were free to do whatever they want. There were no chains on them, which they could express their creativity, where a lot of the comics who get started can't do that.
I think each one of them had bring something to the table as well. If you'd say the writer's table.
Oh, sure. They each had a different style of comedy, right?
Right. Yes, absolutely. One was more intellectual. One was more physical comic. My personal favorite, you know, try to get John Cleese and Eric Idle. But they're all really good as well. Michael Palin, very creative.
But that's what brings the magic. If they were all the same, then it wouldn't have been, you know, part of the magic is arguing on what fits in, and that was what gave you Monty Python. But after the TV series, they went on to make some films. So I'll name a couple films here. Give me your thoughts on Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Groundbreaking.
Okay.
Hysterical. Monumental. I'd say in the films of all time. It's got to be in the top 10.
All right. The Life of Brian.
Very controversial. Like I said, bankrolled by George Harrison. It was about Romans. Messiahs. Very controversial. I say probably their most controversial film. I didn't really understand it when I first watched it.
Right.
When I was probably like early 20s, I guess, late teens or something like that. But now, when I think back, I just kind of
You get something different out of it than you did when you were young, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, the Meaning of Life.
Long-winded.
Long-winded.
It's only a 2.5, 3-hour movie.
Really?
And at the very end of it, they break into a big musical scene. And but there are some fantastic things that came out of that.
Right.
Such songs as, you know, Every Sperm is Sacred. There was a fantastic short at the beginning of the movie, which probably was the best thing in the whole movie, in my opinion, where they had a. So
parts of the movie were better than the whole movie itself, you'd say.
Exactly. I think, well, much like the first film was not for something completely different. And Playboy magazine financed that movie.
Okay.
And it was a fantastic movie, and that was 90 minutes of their best stuff to date. Silly Walk, Argument Clinic.
That was a special they did, right?
Nudge, Wink, Wink. Yeah. Well, it was a movie. It came out as a movie.
Right.
Yeah, so I would, you know, that's a fantastic movie. You know, you start listing off movies, but you can't leave that one out. That's kind of groundbreaking.
All right, so in 2005, a poll of 200 comics voted these comics as the 50 greatest ever, and Monty Python had 3 on the list of 50. Cleese was number 2, Idle number 21, and Palin number 30. So would you put the 3 of them in the top 50?
What was that? Top 50 comics of all time?
Of all time, yeah.
Stand-up or creativity?
Just comedy in general.
Doesn't go hand in hand or anything, but.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking the Dangerfields and the Pryors and the Carlins, and I mean, would you put them in that class?
Yeah, they were more stage. I
Right.
mean, Python did an elaborate stage show as well, but these guys, I first dug them on albums. things like that. But I'd have to put the whole as a collective in the top 5. Is that fair to do?
Yeah, sure. If you put them all together, yeah. How would you argue? I mean, well, like we said, they have more of a cult following, where Pryor and Carlin had the mainstream following. All right.
Well, where do you put the Three Stooges then? They've got to be right up there.
Yeah, right. How would you break up the Three Stooges? You got to put them in as a group. You wouldn't put them in as individuals because that would take away from what they did.
Yeah. The Three Stooges probably the most influential of the physical stand-up comics.
Sure.
You know.
Can't argue that.
I'd like to ask somebody in pipe on you who they watch.
Yeah, who influenced them? Yeah, right. Because a lot of their stuff was groundbreaking. What made them think of it? Yeah.
Right.
But their introduction in North America came from the Canadian Broadcast Company, CBC, who put it in their fall lineup in 1970, and they just put it in as a filler until Christmas into their lineup. Then after Christmas, they went back to the regular programming, and their phone lines just got flooded with phone calls for them to bring that show. And the power of the people, that's who pays the bills, is the listeners. They had to bring the show back. It was that popular once it hit Canada. And after that, Texas PBS station, as you mentioned, 1974, they started airing episodes, and then from there, FM radio started playing audio clips, like you mentioned, from the albums and stuff.
Yep.
After that, Dean Martin had a show, the Dean Martin Comedy World, where he reviewed things in comedy, and he reviewed actually a few clips. This is where they started to hit mainstream. Then in 1975, ABC aired 2 90-minute specials, and I mean, once you hit ABC, would you say that's where they went mainstream? That was their climb to fame?
What did they show on ABC?
I think it was 2 of the specials that we already mentioned there, the Holy Grail and the Life of Brian, one of those I think it was.
Wow, that's taking a pretty big risk for ABC at that time.
Yeah, but I mean, that was their climb to fame, where they started, the Canadian Broadcast Company to PBS, which was, Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street at the time, to the Dean Martin show to ABC, and then... Now, where do you remember them from mostly? It was PBS, you said?
PBS.
Because do you remember MTV for a while in the 80s? They were airing it late night. And I mean, MTV, if you made that, everybody was watching MTV. That was the TV show of the time.
Yes, absolutely. I was there right the day that it started. I was probably a junior in high school. I was prime MTV age. Was it 1980, 1981?
Yeah, all through the 80s, absolutely. So that gave it a whole new following with the younger generation, I think.
What, 2 Monty Python? I don't know how much Monty Python they played on MTV.
That was a little bit late night. That was where I first got introduced to it. I watched a few episodes there, but
Oh, okay. Monty
yeah,
Python
it was late night. Yeah, it was nothing mainstream time, but I was always up late, so like 1, 2 in the morning, you could hit some Monty Python.
Was that when you were introduced to them?
That's when I was introduced to them. Yeah, it was then a little bit that I did, but
Yeah, like I talked about before. We saw on New Year's Eve.
right.
When we knew that the Holy Grail was going to be on.
All right, so now in 1989, Chapman passed away. So I mean, he was probably the one most known, of all of them. So, but even before that, they didn't do a lot of reunions. Why do you think there wasn't many reunions?
It's sort of like the Led Zeppelin sort of thing. They're done. I mean,
That was it.
they're all on the talent. They're in town. They all had successful careers. They're all still making tons of money off Monty Python, and they have done a few.
Right, there were a few get-togethers, but as far as like mainstream, reunions, they never did. Because you don't want to ruin what you accomplished, right? There was no upside for it. I mean, if they did something good, it goes, with their good stuff. They did something bad, it could ruin everything good that they had done, though.
2 years ago or so, they came out and they did 7 nights at the O2 Arena in England.
Really?
Yes, and
sold out?
Sold out.
I would imagine, yeah.
And they did a big Broadway-type production.
Right.
With them doing their skits. They had dances. It's probably one of the, in this humble opinion, Monty Python crazy nut. Best thing you probably could ever watch to do with Monty Python.
Right.
If I was going to say, you want to get introduced to Monty Python? I would say, here you go, watch the Holy Grail and watch this. I forget what it's called, but it came out just recently.
Really?
It's phenomenal.
There's nothing like a live show, though, the feeling of a live crowd and everything. That's why they do studio audiences, to get the live feeling.
No, well, the first live thing that they did was from live from Civic Center,
Right.
Springfield, Mass. Is where it was recorded.
Really? Right here locally, because we're doing the podcast here out of Beantown territory.
Right. So, well, John Cleese was recently up at Capitol Center.
Was he? Now they said there were some rumors that Chapman had a drinking problem, and that was part of the turmoil, which I guess Led Zeppelin could say. Any good band can say that. I mean, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. That was the time, right?
That's what killed Terry Gilliam.
But that's what they said during filming. There were issues with that. I mean, do you think that was?
Yes, he did enjoy his libations quite a bit, and when you do that excessively, it'll kill you, as many people have found out.
Right. That really took away from the group, but the others had to deal with that too. So.
Right, but I don't know. He wasn't one of my favorite members of Monty Python, even though he said he was the face of Monty Python.
I'd say if get help would be that's what I'd say is if you have problems like that, get help. Don't ruin the band, because you don't want to you scratch and claw so long in this business to get a taste of something good. Then when you're doing somebody ruins it, it's like it ruins it for everybody.
Yeah, well.
But we got a few fans of Funny Like a Clown podcast. They wrote in some comments. You want to take a few fan comments and give us your opinion on them?
Absolutely.
All right. Michael McMahon writes in, biggest dickus. Do you know what he's talking about?
No.
Biggest dickus. All right. That must have been one of their skits about who's got the biggest dickus, I assume. I don't know.
No. Not Monty Python. They swoop down to that, but they don't go into the gutter.
No? Okay. P.J. Brown wrote in, self-defense on a banana.
Yes, absolutely. Self-defense on a banana. Famous John Cleese skit where he's teaching some recruits how to defend themselves against fruit.
Really?
And, yes. And John Cleese, a total crazed maniac, high energy, squeaky Geddy Lee voice as he's going crazy. Oh, yes, fantastic skit.
All right. When they got remembered, a lot of the fans chimed in on Monty Python. I'll tell you, they got quite the following. Where usually I get a few comments, people write in. They really wrote in for this one, but
I'd love to try to be stumped now.
All right. Let's see. Todd LaFawn wrote in, "We are the knights that say knee."
Yes, that is from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, their first big movie.
Okay.
And it's during King Arthur's quest for the Holy Grail. He runs into the Neats, if you would.
Okay.
This is one of their stops on their many travel. It's his many travel trying to find the Holy Grail during the movie.
All right. Let's see. This one's funny. Gina in Arkansas wrote in, and I'm going to read it to you just the way she wrote it and see if this rings a bell for you. Brian is a very naughty boy.
No, she got me. I have no idea what she's
She
talking about.
got you on that one, huh?
No, boy. Brian is a very naughty
Well,
boy.
it's BW. Brian is a very, with a W, naughty boy. Well,
It's from the life of Brian, if he's saying Brian.
Right.
I'm sorry.
All right. Brian Keith writes in, I came here for an argument.
You came here for an argument. I came here for an argument.
Okay.
Look at these shoes. Only had them 3 months and the heels are worn right through. I'm sick and tired of this day. I'm sick and tired of this office. That's a little bit from the argument clinic. He's referencing the argument clinic.
Oh, okay. You know that one word for word right there. You were right on that one.
Pretty close, guys.
All right. So let's talk about you. I know you were influenced by Monty Python, and I mean it's.
Do you have any more questions? I really like the questions.
The questions. Well, let me see what I got here. Well, we're going to end off with some trivia here, so let's.
Okay. All right. You got me.
That's in a minute, but let's talk about you for a minute here, because I know we got you on the show talking about Monty Python, the influenced you, and so. Well, what are you up to? And I get a TV show. What have you done in the past? What's going on in the future? What's in Ricky Mapleton's story?
Well, I thank you for asking. Roughly now, I am doing a show called Midlife Pop Culture. It's about what it sounds like. Things for the millennials. It's for the baby boomers. It's not making fun of the millennials, but just trying to do some stuff that's important to a baby boomer in the world of I do a lot of restaurant reviews.
And where can they see this if people want to tune it in?
Yeah, it's a quick half-an-hour show, and it's on public access, and it's a channel 23 in Manch, and it's really fun.
Okay, I think you put them on YouTube too, don't you?
Yes, yes, I do. It's on the Ricky Mapleton Facebook page, Ricky Mapleton, our midlife pop culture show on YouTube, and they're a lot of fun. It's a half an hour. I did one recently where I smashed a Dunkin' Donuts and a Starbucks cups together and kind of commentated a wrestling match from that.
Who won?
Dunkin' Donuts.
Really?
Oh yeah. Well, it was a good match, and I do some concert reviews and whatever happens in the 2 weeks. But I try to make it like the pop shows that you see on TV, but more streamed towards somebody in their 50s.
Okay. What were you doing before the TV show? What got you involved? How did you get your start in comedy?
Let's not go down what I was doing before the TV show. I don't want to get into a conversation about my late grade show, Cooking with Comedy, and your fabulous show, The Comedy Kitchen.
We don't want to go down that road.
But actually, Dennis, I think we should go down that road for a second, because as I told you, I, with your permission, of course, put the Plummel in the Pool. I would consider our swan song.
Sure, because the two of us get together and we did some sketches about wrestling and we both had a couple of cooking shows and.
Right, and then we did this nice little half an hour. We had a commentator. We edited well, called Plummel in the Pool.
Yeah.
We did it over my house on a beautiful summer day, and it was wonderful.
But it was a series. They can go see them on YouTube. It was the Culinary Wrestling Federation, and it's got a little bit of a cult following itself on YouTube.
Who has the belt at this time?
Who is what?
Who has the Culinary Wrestling Federation belt at this time?
I hold the belt right at this moment.
Do you? Okay.
But I'll challenge you right here on this podcast to a rematch anytime you're ready.
I think I would like to take you up on that. I think Plumbel in the Pool Part 2. Because I remember we had some beautiful Hebrew National hot dogs and some corn on the cob. And our good friend Greg Bogus was with us.
Swung by, absolutely.
It was a beautiful hot summer day. I'm looking out right now and just dreaming of the day that I'm going to get that belt back. Right there, I can see my pool is covered with ice. If you were here right now, I'd try to. Well, if you were here right now, I'd be happy. But
there'd be an ice match right now. Who's going through the ice first, right?
No, the saute slam is what I've been working on, my new finishing move. Saute slam. I take the frying pan and I smack it side the head with it.
All right, so check that out on YouTube, the Culinary Wrestling Federation. It's a series that me and Ricky got going, and it's been going forever. All right, are you ready for some Monty Python trivia?
Did I recite a Monty Python? But I'll do some more trivia. How much time do we have left in this fabulous show?
You what?
How long are we going to talk?
There's no set time. It's usually a half hour, and we're coming up on that now. Why, you got anything before the trivia? Anything else you want to say? Let us know.
I would like to recite a few Monty Pythons.
All right, hit us with your best. Give us your best. Go.
Let's go with you. That's the kind of response I expect from you, non-creative garbage. You sit there on your lonesome spotty behind, squeezing blackheads, not giving a tinker's cuss about the struggling artist, you excrement. You whining, hypocritical toady with your Tony Jacqueline golf clubs and your color TV sets and your bleeding Masonic handshakes. You wouldn't let me join now, would you, you black falling bastards? Well, I wouldn't be a black mason now. I mean, a Freemason now. If you got down on your lousy, stinking hands and knees and begged me. Well, we're sorry you feel that way. You just wanted a block of flats. Nice sold as well the house is. And it goes on from there. That's when he freaked out.
Well, that's all off the top of your head, too, huh?
Yeah, I ruined it at the end. But that's one of my... I reckon
but that's one of your favorite who know that much. But it kind of remind me of Shakespeare, though. They're like the Shakespeare comedians.
Yeah, well, I'll take it, Dennis. I've never... Shakespeare in my name has never been...
Shakespeare, Hamlet, Monty Python, they're all in there, right? Any more you got for us?
Give me some trivia.
All right, we end off every show with trivia, so we're going to end it off. We do 3 trivia questions, and so far, nobody's got all 3 right, so don't be nervous if you don't get all 3. So far, Ralphie Joyle got 2 out of 3, and his Meatloaf would say 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but let's see how you do. You ready?
All right, let's go.
And I'm going to give you a hint on this first one, because you've already mentioned the guy's name, and it's not the guy you mentioned. It's somebody else. What famous band helped fund Monty Python and the Holy Grail because they were such fans?
Pink Floyd.
Pink Floyd. You are 1 for 1. Boom. All right.
Yeah, all right.
Monty Python and the Holy Grail hit #1 in Japan. What was the translated name of the show in Japan?
Oh, are you kidding me?
It hit #1 on their television stations in Japan, but they had a translated version of the name. What's that?
Monty Python Flying Circus. That's my guess.
What's your guess?
Monty Python Flying Circus.
Oh, the Japan accent. It was actually known as the Gay Dragon Boys Show. All right, so. All right, you're 1 for 2.
Is any of the comic on that right?
I don't know.
Wow.
All right, you ready for the third one? So this is the...
Wow, yeah.
All right, let's do it. In Monty Python, the Holy Grail, what creature do the Knights of the King Arthur find at the cave of Carabinot?
That would be the killer bunny, the killer rabbit.
Killer Rabbit. You are 2 for 3, so you've tied Ralphie Joyle, but still nobody's gone 3 for 3 on the trivia. Well, Ricky, I want to thank you for being on Funny Like a Clown podcast. I hope the fans got their money's worth for the Monty Python.
Wow. It has been fantastic talking Python with you, Dennis.
It has been great, and hopefully they can check this out on, it's all over the place, iTunes, YouTube, Facebook. Check it out on, hey, till next time, hope to catch some of your stuff and keep them laughing, all right?
All right, thanks, Dennis. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right there, Ricky Mapleton. Check out his stuff, giving his opinion on Monty Python, and what a cult following they had, man. Just like Funny Like a Clown podcast, we got a cult following, and hey, someday we're gonna go mainstream. But until then, I want to thank you guys all for tuning in. Till the next time, till the next episode, keep laughing. Good night.